Hello? Hi. Hey. I'd like to congratulate all of us on making it to Saturday morning. I don't know how you guys feel, but thanks a lot for coming. It's always really great to see people interested in new player stuff. And yeah, so thanks. So this is called Using Science to Help Newbros. I'm going to talk a bit about some of the work we're doing on new player experience, but it's actually going to be relevant for a lot of the work we're doing because it's got to do with sort of how we're thinking about developing stuff using as much kind of testing as we can when it comes to a few different types of tests. So I'll explain it. So first of all, I am CCP Rise. This is my team. I want to give a shout out to them, Team Pirate Unicorns. Awesome folks here, and some of them are around. And I've seen on TED that I should ask questions at the start of a presentation, so I want to ask you guys a couple questions to get going. Raise your hands if you think suicide ganking exists. Yay! Most of you. Raise your hands if you think anyone's ever quit EVE because of being suicide ganked. Okay, good. Raise your hands if you think new players get suicide ganked. Okay, most of you, like probably 80, 90% of you. So kind of a rephrasing, raise your hand if you think suicide ganking is a problem for new players. Okay, like half-ish at least. So this is a discussion that actually comes a lot for us internally, and you would think we would have a really clear idea of this, but actually one of the things that we face a lot is having an enormous amount of data and limited resources and not intelligence, but limited ability to actually analyze it. And you saw from like CCP Quant's presentation that we're starting to do really awesome stuff with looking at the data we have and trying to figure out how people are behaving and how it's affecting them and their gameplay. So this discussion has come up during our work on the NPE, of course, about suicide ganking and kind of harassment of new players in general, and it's something that the community often raises and wants to talk about when we talk about the NPE. And we actually figured out a way, or at least made an attempt at measuring this and figuring out if this is something we should be worried about. So here's what we did. We took 80,000 users, and that's users as in individual people, so it's not, not alt accounts. For those 80,000 people, we looked for deaths in the first 15 days that their account existed. And then for any of those deaths, we checked the killer to see if they've been killed by Concord or other law enforcement agents afterwards. And then based on that, we put them in groups of killed illegally, killed legally, or not killed at all 80,000 of them. And then we looked at how those people behaved in terms of whether or not they kept playing afterwards. And the results were 85% of people don't die in the first 15 days in this group. 13.5% of them die legally, which means in a war deck or when they're in a limited engagement, they've chosen to be involved basically. 1% were ganked. 1% were killed against their will, which looks like this in a picture. And this surprised us. This is kind of crazy. I mean, given how consistent the sentiment is that new players are under a lot of pressure from other advanced players that are coming and harassing them or killing them when they don't want to be killed, this seems surprising. And then, even beyond just being surprised, we looked at what happens to the accounts. And it's opposite of what you would expect. People who die, so people in the ganked group, are the most likely to stay subscribed afterwards. People in the legally killed group were slightly less likely to stay subscribed, and the people who don't die at all were the ones most likely to leave the game. And on top of that, I can give one more fun fact. If you look at account cancellations for EVE, less than 1% of account cancellations cite ship loss or player harassment as a reason for leaving. So, what can we learn from this? That it's really important for us to validate our assumptions. That it's very different for us to try to guess at what's happening with people, and that we can learn a lot from looking at what actually happens in the game and trying to understand that, even though sometimes it can be pretty difficult to figure out. So let me use that as sort of a precedent for how we're working on the NPE in general. and start by going back year to last Fanfest. Oh, not to that though. We did a presentation last year on the new player experience as well, and it was a vision. At that point, we were just sort of digging into this work. We were getting started, and I was explaining kind of what we were hoping for. So we had this vision, we had these statements that we'd kind of put together as part of a bigger document on kind of a vision for the game as a whole. You know, when I started playing, I experienced wonder and at the scope and scale of a science fiction universe. I could understand my place in this universe, and I felt empowered to harness the limitless potential it offered. Information in the world and methods for interacting it were always coherent and elegant, and I always wanted to engage with others more than I wanted to engage, or more than I wanted to do things on my own. These were kind of, you know, the feelings or the experience we wanted to try and create, and you know, that applies to the game as a whole, but especially to the NPE. So based on that, we created some goals. We want more contextual information so that you know, the universe around me makes more sense and I understand how to interact with it better. We want to work on motivation and figure out better ways to do it than just by kind of giving you these reward loops. We wanted to meet expectations better, which includes matching what people think they're going to get when they come into EVE from outside, and also setting up good expectations in the NPE for what they would find when they moved past it and moved into the game as a whole. And try to encourage meaningful experiences. We want EVE to be as powerful as possible, and we want to create the best experiences we can. So those are the goals I laid out then. Based on that, we described some features. So we had tooltips, notifications. Both of these are about feedback and contextual information. And then we mentioned this opportunity system, which at the time was rather vague, but we had this idea that we wanted some achievement-ish thing that would help point new players in a direction they wanted to go. And that we might need an in-game reference, that we might need some place where we could put information that they couldn't find anywhere else in the client. But the last kind of piece, it was actually one of the last two slides in the presentation, said like, oh yeah, we want to play test as well. And this ended up having a huge influence on how development of the NPE went. So sometime after I did the presentation last year, we started working on this opportunity system, and as soon as we could, we started arranging play tests. So first of all, just to explain kind of how they worked, we needed people, of course. So who did we get? Well, we wanted gamers, obviously. We wanted people who hadn't played EVE, felt this is really important, even though a lot of the feedback we get from the community and a lot of the feedback or kind of insight we have internally it's really good. It's often from people who already know how to play, and it's very hard to kind of see from a fresh perspective a lot of time, or the perspective of a new person. So this was really important. And we needed people who would basically work for sandwiches. And luckily, Iceland is full of like poor wannabe artists who are rather tech savvy. So it was really easy for us to just basically ask around, get tons of people. And so this is kind of who we used, which worked out great. So for round one, let me grab a drink. For the first round of opportunities, we basically, or the first round of playtesting, this is kind of all we had. We said we want to know kind of how people interact with the game. As soon as, like, we want to have a baseline for what to expect people to do as soon as possible. So we don't want to bother actually building a big feature and then finding out afterwards if it works. We'd rather experiment as soon as we can. So this is just a PDF, which we put on a second monitor and had people look at, and then we just started them in space, in a ship, in a new character, just had them sit down, and we just said, this is all you have, go play EVE, so that we could, you know, see what people actually do. The other thing that we had is, this is an overlay that we built for the UI, which they could push, you see the button here, P, and toggle, and it just would pop up, kind of says, check for tooltips, shows how the menus work, and then explains a couple of the basic UI elements, the overview, the ship status panel, the chat, etc. And actually, we were really excited about this. We thought this would go a long way to helping people decipher the UI up front without having to do a lot of long explanation. So we were really excited, and then we had people start playing. And some really weird stuff happened. This is someone trying to do a mission, but they've opened show info on a system. I think it's a system, yeah, or on a station maybe. And the default location for the show info window is right over the info panels in the upper left. So this person had no idea where they were and had no idea where the mission information was. And so they just flew around having no idea what to do for the duration of their playtest because it was covered up by a show info window. this is someone in station. They're going to leave their ship, so they've right-clicked their ship and they've scrolled down to leave ship, which is great. And then they're like, okay, I want my ship back, so I'll just right-click my pod and enter ship. But that doesn't work at all, so they never found their ship again. And so based on that, we after the first playtest, we put together a huge list. I mean, these things were, there were many things where just strange, seemingly obvious weirdnesses in the way that the UI works or the way that the information's presented were confusing people like crazy. And so we built a huge list of stuff to just go fix. And that work started basically right away. Big lessons we got from the first round of playtest. No one used our overlay at all. And this is a really good example of validating our assumptions. When we built this, we showed it on the company. Everyone came and saw it. And they were like, this is great. Like, you can use this whenever you want. It's really light. It does a really good job explaining things. Awesome. Like, you know, we felt like shipping it. And it turns out nobody used it at all. Like, nobody. They never touched it. Even though, you know, we told them about it. There was the button, told them they could open it on the PDF we had open for them. Second thing we learned is that feedback is huge. Eve is not the best at telling you what's happened to you. A lot of the time that's happening through mission steps, or it's happening because you understand how the systems work. But if you don't have that knowledge, you don't know what's going on a lot of the time. So we had, you know, things like people traveling multiple systems and then being really frustrated, like doing it with autopilot, and then being really frustrated that they hadn't left their starter system because they actually had no way to know that they'd moved systems, even though they jumped through a gate. And so we really highlighted the need for feedback. And the really cool thing we learned is that people actually can figure out a ton of stuff by themselves. The tutorial now, or the old tutorial, has an enormous amount of explanation, and we found that tons of that explanation was basically unneeded. That people, while they you know, do get confused by a lot of stuff, and there's huge room for improvement, people were really good at figuring out how to warp, for instance. They just immediately start right-clicking stuff and start warping around, and it's no problem. And there was a lot of examples of that. So that was all good stuff to learn. So then we set up a second round of playtests. We actually used the overlay UI that we'd built rather than the PDF. So we told people push a button and you can see our opportunity set. And then we did a lot to improve on the feedback. So you can see here, this is actually in client. It's checking for success on these tasks. It's giving a little bit more description about how to do them, and then it's turning them green when you're successful so that people had an idea of when they were actually doing something right. And so again, we grabbed some people and did some stuff. You can see here, we also have notifications hooked up now. So there's a little one in the corner here where it's saying, you know, congratulations, you warped. And so that's another way that people could know that they were doing the thing that they had tried to do. And now this is just kind of fun to share. Another cool thing about playtesting, especially, like I said, you kind of never know what people are going to do. This is a playtester who is visiting a customs office. This is another one visiting a customs office. This is another one trying to interact with the customs office. This is a different one trying to do PI. We discovered people for sure are obsessed with planets, and we can't really tell why. But that was kind of interesting. It actually ended up being really helpful. It encouraged us to think about doing things like putting NPCs at planets so people could find them there in their early experience, or removing or changing the way customs offices are presented because they really wanted to interact with them, often dock at them or blow them up, but they couldn't figure out how. So we could maybe make changes there. But in the second round of playtest, we really hit gold with some bigger things. This is a playtester who was actually a guide on our pub crawl last night. And she is trying desperately to kill this billboard. She she tried to, you know, do everything she could. She's approached it, she's locked it, she's being told that she can't with her safety on, so she's actually disabling her safety without having any idea what happens if she does that, just so that she can shoot the billboard. And what this points to, and there were other examples of it as well, is that our new players were not getting their needs met. They were really wanting to blow stuff up and not getting to fast enough. And there's a couple examples of this, but basically, yeah, they were, as new players, expecting to get a kind of experience or wanting things to happen. Another example is like wanting to explore. You know, people are often very impressed by the universe, and they want to be like, visiting things and seeing stuff, but they don't really understand how to do that, and combat is really the biggest example. So after this playtest, we went and totally rethought our goals. You remember earlier I had a list of goals, and we just totally restructured the way we were thinking about it and started thinking about what people really wanted to feel during the experience rather than kind of more system-based goals that like we had before. So the things we really came to and actually didn't have too hard of a time coming to is people want to feel confident. They don't want to feel stupid. Leaving your ship and then not knowing how to get back in it makes you feel defeated and frustrated, and that's bad. People want to feel progress. They want to know they're learning something. That's got a lot to do with the feedback, but they want to know that they're moving forward. They want purpose. They want to understand why they're doing stuff. That was really important. We had plenty of playtesters who would do things successfully, but they wouldn't understand why they might want to do that. They just knew that they had done it because they were told to, but they didn't have a good context for why that was important. And most importantly, excitement. People really wanted to do awesome stuff in the game, and we felt like it's super, super important to deliver that as fast as we can. And then the other thing we did as a part of this is separate our needs as developers or as a company from the needs of the players. So things like, maintainability. We talked about this in the presentation last year that, it's really bad to have this tutorial because it's really tough for us to keep it up to date. It takes a lot of work, often ends up out of date or confusing or not matching current features. But this is really something that we care about. I mean, it's an issue for us, not for the player. We want better players, which I guess you could argue a little bit that this is a player need, but really it's about we would be happier if people were becoming professionals, like you remember from CCP Quant's conversation or presentation in the keynote, those segments, like our best players are the ones that stay around the longest, so we want to make better players if we can. We want it to scale well in case we have tons of people rushing into the game because of this Eve. We want players as content because that's really good for driving all kinds of things in the game. We want good tracking and metrics. These are things we care about, and then it was good for us to separate that out. So along with this, the other thing we noticed after switching modes during this kind of resetting of goals is that if we're thinking about EVE Online like this big band of possible experiences, we knew when we had started reworking the NPE that the old tutorial was this really thin line. You can imagine a new player going through this tiny track within the EVE experience that's rather limited and far too linear. And we knew we wanted to get away from that. But in our playtests, what we'd created instead was an experience like this that covers a huge range of potential experiences, and people would basically do this as they went through it. And because of this, we had no idea how to know if their needs would get met. The goals I laid out before, how do you guarantee that any of that happens in an experience that looks like this? So what we decided to move towards instead is kind of this gradually expanding exposure to the potential experiences in EVE. So we want a system that will eventually open up to where people get led into a huge range of things so that they can do the thing that they like, but we also want some control over how they move through that experience so that we can be sure that we meet their needs. Shh. He was snoring, it was awesome. All right, so after establishing all this, we actually just started building a system. We're like, okay, we feel pretty confident now about how people use EVE when they're first setting foot in it, and we feel much more confident about what kind of experience we want to deliver. So we actually just built this system, and it looks a lot like the system you're seeing on TQ today. It at least at first had this window where Aura would talk to you about offering an opportunity to you. It has the starting in space. It had starting in a dungeon that has some NPCs and some asteroids. Also has these new static dungeons in the NP or the starter systems, so that hopefully there's more chance of you finding things to kill. It has this tree view where you can see all the things that we're offering for you to do at any point, so you don't have to do it in a particular order, but you can look around and see what's interesting to you. And it had this info panel that would track your progress as you went through an opportunity. So the opportunities are made of a set of tasks, anywhere between 1 and like 6 right now. And as you go through, you would get these kind of checkboxes, and you could see the titles to remember what it is you're trying to do. And again, we wanted to test and see how this would go. And again, we found a whole bunch of problems. This is a playtester who's getting killed by NPCs in the starter dungeon because they were a little too hard to start. And so that's not good. This one is a picture where you can see our feedback is coming from this notification that takes up like 2% of the screen. Something we saw really commonly in the playtest is that people just basically didn't notice the notifications ever. And also, this Aura window that we built was pretty frustrating. It was too persistent. It was popping up for each task, and so people were kind of always having it in their face like this. It was blocking the scene too much. The placement of it wasn't right, and so people felt like it was kind of oppressive, and they were always trying to move it somewhere, get rid of it, and that was kind of annoying. So again, we built a huge list of stuff to fix based on our tests. All kinds of little things like this. Went off and took care of many of them as we could, and some of them are still sitting on a backlog waiting to get tweaked, but did what we could. But what we saw was that the overall experience was improving a lot. People in this round of playtesting were actually having fun. They were killing things, they were feeling empowered, they could kind of choose which things they wanted to do. They were running into way less roadblocks where they were, whatever, getting lost or having a UI window cover up the information they needed, that kind of thing. So this is looking really good. So that's really awesome. And so if we want to talk about kind of how this playtesting went overall, for all the opportunities work, the 3 rounds that we did, basically we learned an enormous amount that we wouldn't have learned otherwise, and we feel it's like incredibly valuable. So we're super happy about that. It caused us to totally throw out a lot of our assumptions and restart and rethink, which is great, basically. It was kind of tough to take that on, but the value in doing this instead of trying to do it on TQ is huge. I think it would have been really good for us to run some playtests for the old tutorial. There was some existing, but they were pretty old and they were run in a different way, so they weren't as helpful as they could have been, and I think it would have been cool for us to do as a baseline a set of playtests using the old tutorial just to see how people use that. And I think also one thing we could kind of retrospect is that we could be more selective about our subjects. It's definitely hard to find people. There's a big difference, obviously, between people who can try a game and people who are actually interested in playing the game. And anyone who signs up for EVE and goes to actually be a new player at least has some kind of internal motivation to do it. And none of our playtesters did. I mean, some of them kind of said if their real life wasn't the way it was, maybe they would be interested. But a lot of them were people who were interested in other genres of games or weren't interested in sci-fi or whatever. And so they might not have been as kind of accurate to actual EVE new players as they could have been. One last note on playtesting here is that it's really unique, unfortunately, that we're working on NPE. Playtesting, you can imagine, for like SOV, like you can't really do it. So we're in a really cool place to be able to get to do it here, but we're looking at as many ways as possible to branch out to other feature work. Sorry. All right, so following this, it was time for deployment. And our team was really excited. Look at CCP Carker jumping. Yeah, we were like pumped. Like we were really happy about where the work had gone, and we were really excited to see what would happen. But there was actually a lot of concern. To go back to kind of people's assumptions, I'm going to show you 3 pieces of text. Opportunities suck, by the way, and I'm not sure releasing them to TQ is the best idea. I had a short run through the new system on Singularity during the weekend. In my opinion, the new system is far from complete enough for a live test with 50% of our new customers. And bottom line is that his feeling is the NP as implemented on CC is an experience more likely to make new players quit than the one on TQ. And these 3 messages, one of them is from an ISD member, one of them is from a fellow developer, and one of them is from, it's secondhand from someone's friend who had played it on CC from in the company. And so you can see smart people who work with us and work on the game constantly definitely felt worried about releasing this to the public. But to go back to where I started, rather than be really focused on what we kind of can agree on as a committee through arguing in the sky and ideas, we just want to validate stuff. So that's where we bring in A/B testing, which is basically we just, rather than argue about it, we ship it to a group of players, and then we look at how those players behave compared to the players that are not getting it. And again, we have a really unique opportunity to do this in the NPE. It would be pretty hard to A/B test balance changes, for instance. But so this is what we did, and it's pretty cool actually in a place where as a whole the company is excited to do this right now, to try things and kind of be a little bit more risky and just look at the results, make changes if we need to rather than being scared. So here's a whole bunch of graphs of how this went so far, and this is basically from, it's been basically a month now. The data I have here is from like last week, and I think we released it like 3 or 4 weeks before that. So this is the number of characters who double-clicked in space based on test groups. So the opportunities group in blue, the tutorial group in gray. And you can see it's not quite double, but basically the whole difference between these two lines is the number of characters that would have never double-clicked. So our engagement with just manually piloting your ship is up hugely. Same with place to buy order. Blue line, number of characters who bought something from the market. Gray line, tutorial characters who have not bought something from the market, or who have bought something from the market. Mined, look at this. The number of characters and opportunities that have mined is like more than double the number of tutorial characters that have mined. And this is for all the time since we released it, or all the time they've been in the game basically. They're staying in these two cohorts, and this is pretty wild difference. And most importantly of all, probably killed NPC. The difference isn't as dramatic, but still opportunities players are killing NPCs more regularly or more consistently by a more amount than the tutorial group, which feels like a huge success. One example of one that goes the other way, and I'm sorry if the colors are flipped and it's confusing, but people who injected a skill, the tutorial group is doing much better. This is pretty easy to explain. We're not giving people any money or any skill books in the opportunity system, so they have to take quite a few steps to actually get them. And we've had quite a bit of feedback that that's kind of a hiccup sort of in the system, but it doesn't seem like a huge deal. We know that it only takes a couple minutes of mining to get enough money to get a skill book, and we're very happy to have opportunities eventually go to a place where people are going to have to solve problems and kind of figure out how to make something happen rather than have it all handed to them step by step. That said, we might make a change here and give them enough money at the start to just be able to buy a skill book. But that's one example where the tutorial's doing better. And the most important thing of all is actual conversion, people subscribing based on which group they were put into. And so here in the gray is our group, opportunities, and blue is tutorial. And I had to take the numbers off the graph because I can't tell you guys exactly how many people are coming into the game each day, but there's about 14% increase in the conversion ratio. So we're seeing like basically for every 5 characters subscribing in the tutorial group, there's 6 characters or 6 accounts subscribing in the opportunities group, which is a massive improvement. And this is based, remember, in the first iteration of opportunities, which only has the 6, the starting 6. We're not telling them any of the things that we hope to eventually yet, like joining player corporations or getting into PvP or checking out other sec bans. Like there's so much room to expand, and already we're seeing this huge improvement. And while this, it's early in terms of data, and this number might not actually be the long-term increase in conversion, we have, when I made the slide, 98.69% chance that there has been a significant improvement to conversion based on math. That's what CCP Rise says. He likes math. This has actually moved up to like 99.5% since. So we're doing really, really well. I'm excited to see what the next slide is. Don't remember. Oh, yeah. This is really great. I actually don't remember what was here. Doesn't matter. One of the first slides I had on the presentation last year was talking about how our eventual goal was to get rid of the tutorial. This is definitely going to happen. I mean, with the data we have now, we're doing well enough that we actually had to kind of fight to leave the tutorial in for half the people for our second iteration, just so we can build our data, get more robust information about the effect. But it looks right now like it's doing well enough that the tutorial will just be gone probably in another release or two. And yeah, like I was just saying, we're adding a lot to this already. We have these things coming in the release on Tuesday. So we took market and fitting opportunities out of the old station opportunity and made them their own, and they're much more detailed. We are starting to add social opportunities like talking to other players, yeah, joining corporations, that kind of thing. I don't know if Join Corp is in there now, but starting to add social stuff. Route setting and map, which is really important. We saw in playtesting people really, really love to use the map. We also saw that they're not great at figuring out how to get from place to place early on, so we have an opportunity to explain that. And also death, so that when they die, they know kind of that it's not a big deal and how to deal with it. And yeah, there will be lots more coming after that. So that's it for me. We could probably, I don't know what time is like, we could do a little bit of Q&A in here, and then also we have a round table after this at 3 o'clock in Jita. So thanks a lot for coming to listen to MPE stuff. I don't know. Does anybody want to ask questions in here, or? Yeah, at least one.
Would you ever consider giving Aura a voice again?
Yes, absolutely. We would love to do that. It's one of those maintainability issues. It can be, if we do pay someone to do a bunch of voice acting, and then we come and add opportunities later or change them because of problems we find, then we get stuck having to go find that person again and record stuff. But one thing we're investigating is text-to-speech, which is getting pretty sophisticated apparently, and it can be a little tricky and a little expensive, so we're trying to figure out a way that we can make that happen, because I think that would really, really help the experience.
Thank you.
Yep.
And yeah, I noticed there's a new player section on forum, of the EVE online forum.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried doing some kind of qualitative research on those posts, like content analysis or? No.
That would be really interesting to do.
Yeah, I did it. Actually, I did it. And
oh, great.
The two important thing is how to train your skill and how to fit your ship. So probably those are the two things you might want to.
So I mean, you could probably draw lots of conclusions from that, but I mean, rather than it being necessarily the most important, it might be the thing that's hardest to understand given the current experience.
Yeah, but I mean, important is like mention more than other posts.
That's really interesting. I'd love to have you do another round of analysis after the opportunities are in the game and see how that shifts.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, something to watch for sure.
Because I get like 200 posts.
Yeah.
Because I'm a student, I don't have enough time to do all like 2,000 posts over there.
Don't slack off, man. Like, do all of them. Yeah.
Hi there, Spanky Calla from EVE University. This is all looking good. You said in your talk that about 1%, or sorry, less than 1% leave because they've been ganked, and it's fantastic that we've managed to kind of kill that myth.
Yeah.
But from the stats you've got, I imagine that there's a number of people here from sort of starter training corporations that are interested in the MPE. What can we do to keep everybody else in, i.e. what are the big reasons that people are leaving that we can potentially do to stop that happening and support you guys?
That's a really good question. We're looking into this ganking issue and the conversation surrounding it kind of caused us to put a small kind of group together to look into this exact question. We're going to try and do it backwards, look at people who are leaving and then try to work back to the things that have happened to them recently and try and figure out if there's anything in the gameplay that we can see in our data that we could look at, for making balancing changes or asking, help for things or make opportunities for. And so hopefully we have a lot more information about that coming up soon. I mean, off the top of my head, you guys are already doing so much. The one thing we see really consistently across all of our kind of new player analysis is that as soon as people are engaged socially, they're just way better off. If you take any group of player behavior, whether they're interested in PvPing or PvEing or whatever, it doesn't matter. If they get to where they're interacting with other people, they play more. They play more per day. They are more likely to stay subscribed. So just having organizations like eUni is doing so much for us that that's I don't know. It feels like a really important place to start for sure. I mean, it's doing a lot. If we get a lot of information, coming up that might inform how you guys kind of try to structure your experiences, I'll definitely make sure you know.
Yeah, definitely, because I mean, the people in the room, when you identify what's causing people to leave, we want them to stay as much as you do. It's not a problem you have to solve. We can work with you.
We can do it together.
Yeah. Cheers.
Yes.
Hi, Akram from Brave Newbies. It's kind of following on what you were saying. Have you ever kind of snuck into maybe eUni or Brave and seen while we do these? Because there's an endless sea of patience in these groups for new guys, and I was just wondering, have you ever looked into it and see if you can acquire? Or
Yeah. I personally have not joined Brave, but it's not unusual at all. We have a lot of folks in the company who are part of Brave as well as other new player organizations and have a lot of direct kind of contact and experience with them. So yeah, we totally are in there kind of watching what you do.
Cool, cheers. What time did you get in last night?
Me? Yeah. 5:30. All right, well, I guess that's it for questions. So we can head out of here, and I'll just see you guys in the round table in about 20 minutes.